new septic system, how long does that work? If I can ask the engineers, do you have any idea? Can you please tell us? Generally, a brand new septic system, how long should that be able to continue without any issues?
So, do you want me to just answer that one or go back to your other questions? Because I can answer some of your other questions too. So, for instance,
You have the numbers, but these...
Hazard Street has 30 homes served.
Okay.
That's one of several numbers that we have. Depends on how much you're at. So it's hard to answer a question like that when it's non-specific. So, for instance, Hazard Street has 30 properties served.
Okay.
Each of the areas that we serve have a different number of properties served. The entire sewer program for what we see for Eastern Coventry going forward has something on the order of 4,300. 4,365 is the Pennsylvania number from the facility. Total residential properties that would be served. That's a mix of commercial, residential, but remember that we don't always have, because it takes so long to build everything, we don't always have accurate information on what gets built and changed and how many units they have. So those numbers tend to be a little bit round until we get into each area. But we do actually we know the numbers as we go into each area and when we build them.
So you know that on Hazard Street there was approximately 30, and overall there'll be approximately 4,300. How many of those have septics?
So all the homes that we're putting in have septic systems, obviously. And so you're...
Don't say obviously, because we're still in that year period where everybody has to change over from septic to cesspool to septic. So possibly some of them may not.
You're right. Some homes have, every home has a...
I'm sorry, I'm not the
Every
expert.
home has an on-site system of some type.
Okay.
Some of them are cesspools, some are true septic systems, some are alternative systems. At one point in time when the facility plan was done, there were still some homes that had a pipe that went out somewhere into the back and
Got them
stopped.
very scared.
Right.
And I get
Whatever, right.
So those definitely need to have something done to it. But for someone who's just put in a septic, as you've heard many have, within the last year, the last 2 years, 3 years, generally, especially with brand new septic systems, we've come a long way from those pipes way back years ago. How long do they last?
So determining how long a new septic system will last
Yes.
is a very difficult thing. It depends on a lot of factors, and a couple of folks that have spoken here tonight have actually mentioned some of those factors. One of those that's very significant, one gentleman talked about how you treat your septic system.
Correct.
Folks that do a really good job of maintaining a septic system, if it was built to modern standards, can probably expect to get a very long service period out of their septic system. Certainly in excess of 20, possibly 30 years, and upwards of 50 is not unusual. Septic systems generally over time, though, will eventually fail because they generally get plugged. A small amount of solids escape the septic tank when you actually dose the septic system.
Yeah.
It's not something you can prevent. It's in the nature of the design of a septic system. So over time, the field tends to plug. It's possible for folks who use a very small amount of water that can take a very long period of time, but it is very unpredictable. There are a lot of folks I know who their septic systems fail pretty quickly because they discharge things, and again, the gentleman that made the comments was pretty good there. You discharge either some type of chemical to your septic system, or one of the worst ones is grease. Or you put it in a garbage grinder and you grind garbage and put it out to your septic system when you really shouldn't be doing that in a septic system.
Right.
So there's a lot of things that factor into how long your septic system will give you service. There are septic systems, though, that can be in place and can appear functional that aren't really performing up to the standard, and this is one of the things we talked about. Septic systems generally are thought to be working by the homeowner as long as they don't back up. And we can actually say that there are a number of things. If you poison your septic system, it doesn't always back up, but it can stop treating and it can discharge different things into the environment. We also have an issue if the soil is very well drained, where the water, if it goes away, you generally assume it's working, and it isn't always working. In point of fact, a septic system whose leaching field is in contact with the groundwater table is categorically working. That's something that's universal across the country. It's not a Rhode Island standard. It's not anybody's individual standard. Those are just the things we know because of the way a septic system is designed to treat wastewater. The challenge with the type of problems that we have here is we can't build sewer systems to serve people that currently have failing septic systems. And it's actually one of the things we really like to do. In a perfect world, we would very much like to wait for a street to all have problems with their septic systems and then go in and say, don't worry, in 6 months we'll have a sewer in that street for you and address it. In general terms, what tends to happen is if we can catch 1 or 2 people on a street at the time that their septic system is actually experiencing failure problems, that's usually a pretty good hit rate. And I know that doesn't sound great, but legitimately that's the way it works because the systems all fail at different times by their very nature.
They do all fail at different times. So there are ways that you can figure out if they're failing though, right? Not necessarily you personally, but there are ways of learning whether it's failing or not.
Yep.
So
and
do
I
we
forgot
have-
to answer that one. I apologize for jumping in.
It's okay.
I did forget to answer that part of your question too, and that was a good question too. Every time we redo the facility plan, we actually pull the most recent data. I think I mentioned this at the last town council meeting. We actually go through the previous 5 years of data from DEM's files, and we look at everything that's happened with anybody's septic system in the entire planning area. And we do that pretty exhaustively to try to see if something's changing drastically in that area. Some areas will exhibit that there's a lot of new systems and no one's had a problem building those systems and they look good. And that will give us an indication that, geez, maybe this area shouldn't have sewers because folks are clearly successfully building septic systems. In other areas, we'll see that people have excessive pump outs. And that's usually a symptom that their system has failed, and that's really all they can do when your system starts backing up is pump out. But it's an indication of failure. But
Or they tend to pump
but we do
off
actually,
premature.
yeah, but we do actually pull those records, so I just want to make sure I answered that.
So the DEM records having to do with those that have failed or those that they know is based on who's putting new ones in. That's how they collect their data. So would it not necessarily be a good idea to have someone actually inspect them? Have an idea of what's going on in our town? Are there certain areas that you may be missing the entire area, but they're all failing? And it's still going to end up backing up somewhere. Right?
Again,
Right.
another very good question. So there are communities that employ management
Inspectors?
approaches that include physical inspections.
But not this town.
We actually have done a tri-town program in a couple of towns as a trial basis going back maybe 15 and 20 years ago. And we set up a program that the town implemented to just go around and inspect literally everybody's septic system. The challenge is...
How often? Like every 5 years or...
You do it once every 5 years generally. You try to do it once more frequently, once every 2 or 3 if you can. And if we're asking people about pumping, we always recommend you pump every 2 to 3 years anyways, even if you don't have to.
Right.
That sounds a lot, but it can actually protect your field. The challenge with the inspection program is it's costly to administer and it's fairly invasive, and we actually found through practice, and I think almost all the communities who have done this on a large scale, they still do it on small scales, found that homeowners generally don't like to get a call to say, hey, I'm coming to your house to inspect your septic system tomorrow. It comes across as a little invasive, so it was...
Well, there are better ways of planning it out, yes.
Yeah.
They could have notification beforehand about things that happen, which unfortunately appears to not happen very often here. But thank you, I appreciate that, all that information. So there is a way of having an inspector inspect certain streets, certain areas, so you would have information ahead of time and know what it is that you're dealing with, rather than making assumptions. That's my point. Don't make assumptions. So if you, I'm sorry. So Mr. McGee, you had mentioned before that you had no idea, excuse me, something's happening. Had no idea how many people on Hazard Street, I believe it was in particular to Hazard Street or another one that was speaking earlier on a particular street. You had no idea how many people you had sent out flyers. You don't know who came, who left, who may have moved, who whatever, correct? You didn't have any of that information. Yes, sir.
I got returned.
You got returns
I got returns from people with answering some questions. I think the
from
question...
2011.
Pardon?
From 2011?
From 2011,
Okay.
correct.
And you said as a follow-up to that you have no idea since then how many people still live there, how many left?
That's correct.
Okay, so on the town tax assessor database, the information available online through Northeast Revaluation Group, it's a public site. Any one of us can look it up and get that information for you probably in about 10 minutes. If we, as taxpayers, whenever we want something, information from the town, we have to take time out of work to go to the office and request it in person. You're the town council. You have access to information like that. There is no excuse for you to say you don't have information that is right there at town hall. None at all. So out of everything that I've seen in the past few meetings, in all of these sessions. It's amazing. Of all these sessions, these town council meetings, these issues, from what I can see, they all come down to a few simple issues. The majority of this town council does not do the due diligence that is required of your position, does not do the due diligence in asking questions beforehand. You wouldn't have a lot of these issues if you do. You don't ask questions beforehand. You're not making sure that you have all of the completed documentation before suggesting that you vote on something's complete. You're not following protocol. Honestly, these are all skills that our teachers teach in elementary school.
Okay. You're next.
Okay, Lisa Castelli, 15 Chopin Street. Why weren't the studies that you're all saying you're willing to do now, why weren't they done before the $29.2 million debt that we're in for now? No answers?
Weren't sure your question.
Why weren't the studies that you all are saying will be done now, why weren't they done before the $29.2 million we are now in debt for?
Obviously, we make decisions on what's brought before us for our council. I can't, we can't say that other councils why, as a group, they've made a decision on stuff. But decisions in the past were made to move ahead, to borrow money to, for particular projects, and so they become cumulative over time. And I'm sure that, again, with all the information that was presented by the engineers, by the sewer subcommittee, etc. That's the criteria that the councils have used for to make decisions. And obviously, the one question that we erred on, and I'll admit to making an error, is to not asking the question: was it financially really feasible, socio-economically, for a particular area? We didn't ask that. We followed the reports, etc. That obviously was seeing the outcry, the community outcry, seeing what's been done. That's why we're now decided to make a decision to say, how are we going to move forward with this program? We've heard what you said, and that's the idea for the resolutions, to try to come up with a solution for everybody that we can.
But we're still going to be in the 29.
Well, that's correct, and that's some of the solutions that we have to come up with, because if we're going on a negative trajectory like it was presented, this council, we're trying to catch a flood downstream and try to make the best decisions that we can.
Okay, so if you said there's 4,600 houses in the Anthony district, is that?
I think that's the entire facilities plan.
The facility plan? Yes. Okay, so you're going to be making $96 million. It's going to cost to do this. Well, if you, I want to thank you all for your answers tonight. You did a great job answering everybody's questions. And these two there's two ladies right here, God bless you, because you are the only two that are willing to help and speak up for everybody. And you're not going anywhere. So anybody in District 3, be at Club Joe, Thursday night at 6 o'clock. They're recalling McGee's spot.
All right, we entertain the motion to the public forum up ahead of the two votes on the resolutions. Now we're back to the resolutions. We have the first one before us is the regarding the Hazard Street sewer line. It's resolution B1, which has already been read. All right.
Now, can I
do
ask?
I have a motion to? You get a motion. You get a second. Any discussion?
Let her speak.
We get a motion, we get a second, and then I'll ask for discussion of the council before I vote. Do I have a motion to approve the B1, the resolution that's already been read to stop the construction on Hazard Street sewer line? Do I have a motion? Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, discussion, Mrs. Baker.
Okay, great. Hang on, glasses. I would like to, the progress schedule that's in the contract, by the way, the contract for Hazard Street, if anyone wants to find it, it was not provided to council, by the way. I went on, Google searched, I found it. You can go to accentblueprints.com. You can find the Hazard Street contract. You can find those boring reports that we're going to be talking about. You can also find the two contracts for Arnold Road, if you want to review them. This one is about 32 pages long, so I just have snippets of it. I do have a question regarding this project. The progress schedule that was scheduled, I don't see a copy of it, so are they on target? Are they meeting their benchmarks? Have there been any reports from the engineer? Have there been any concerns? Because I'm kind of baffled also regarding these boring reports. We have a drill report from May 13th, 2003, and it states large cobbles and boulders are likely. There are 6 boring reports. One in particular, hang on, bear with me, boring number B87. It says bedrock. It also says the auger refusal at 8 feet attempted to auger through obstruction without success. I'm questioning why this, and by the way, these are all dated 11/19/2009. So it looks like in 2003 and in 2009, there were issues with Hazard Street. So I'm just confused why we even went forward. And I want to know, I really want to understand, did the engineers have any difficulties? Where did the contractor contact them? Is that why we're stopping this project all of a sudden?
Go ahead.
So, a couple of your questions. First of all, yes, we did the borings earlier than the project was done. A number of the borings were done at various phases of the planning for various projects, going back to 2003. The majority of the borings for Hazard Street were done when we originally did the Quidnick design, which was, I want to say 2008, 2009. Just prior to when the town decided to stop that project. We actually had most of this previously designed and had shelved it at that time. Generally, the borings are fine to be reused. We did, as I think I've said before, we did fully anticipate hitting rock on Hazard Street. The contract, if you will see, has a significant quantity of rock in it, but we do borings every 300 feet. So I think, as I mentioned in answer to one of the questions, it's kind of hard to know exactly what you're going to hit between the borings. In point of fact, in answer to your later question, we did hit more rock, and we've been talking about that as we've gone. We did hit more rock right away than we were hoping to hit. That first knob, a lot of the folks in the room have actually mentioned that we've been hammering at, is much harder than we were kind of hoping to get through because it came up faster. But again, that was within the confines of what we expected to see on this particular street. In point of fact, the rock on the street is one of the reasons why we anticipate needing to have a sewer system in there, because it's not really a conducive area to septic systems long term. The status report that we have right now, I think Tim had told me that we've reached a point where we've expended enough of the rock where we feel comfortable that we likely will have more cost if we finish the street. And that is absolutely a concern, and we have begun to raise that with the town. But that kind of has happened in parallel with this concern about stopping the sewers. So I think the goal at this point is to find out the will of the town council. Our anticipation from the engineering side is to help you make a solid, sound decision as to if you want to stop the project or where to stop it. our goal would be to mitigate the town's costs in that case, because when you terminate a contract, there are likely to be contract termination expenses.
Is it possible to get a copy of that progress schedule? Because I'm curious, because in the contract, it states that this project is to be fully completed by October 27th, 2017.
So yes, I apologize, Councilwoman, I forgot to answer that part of your question. They are, obviously, because there's so much rock, they are behind schedule, yes.
So the contractor's having the issue. Is that why? Is this being proposed, we have this in front of us tonight? Did they have
So
concerns that they would not be able to get this done by October 27th?
The contract is not making great progress, and they're obviously, I can only assume, not thrilled that they're not making great progress. The contractor has not once suggested to anybody that I know of that they do not want to fulfill their contractual obligation to finish the work on the road.
But have they had concerns that they would not be able to get this contract done by the 27th?
It is pretty clear that finishing it by the 27th, unless we complete, the rock completely disappears, is pretty much off the table.
And if they didn't, then there would be liquidated damages in the sum of $1,000 for each consecutive calendar day, correct? I just have one other thing. It would have been very helpful prior to voting on this Hazard Street project, it would have been very helpful to have this document in front of us, because we would have seen these boring reports. We would have questioned why we would ever go forward with this project. So please going forward, we need to see these. We need to see these boring reports. I mean, and people may say they're boring, but 383 pages long. I mean, it's unbelievable. It tells you all about your change orders, unauthorized changes at work. I mean, we'll have to look at that for the Arnold Road project. You know, it's very interesting to read this. And I think the council should have seen this before we even voted on this, because I think there would probably be, I know I would not have voted for it.
Okay, thank you. All right, motion made and seconded. All in favor?
Whoa, wait a minute.
I
Whoa,
still have
whoa.
a couple of issues. I think Greg has.
You go, I'll let you go.
I didn't know anybody else had a question.
Because you don't listen. On both of these resolutions, and I know we haven't made the motion for the second one yet, but they both say, well, this one in particular says, an appropriate place to stop the project prior to completion. There's no criteria for stopping. Who's going to say that we shouldn't just stop it now? Because they're not going anywhere. It's just, they can't get through the ledge or the granite, whatever you want to call it. And then also there is, I thought we had something in here about a 60-day. The manager will report back to the town council on the final outcome of the Hazard Street sewer project. It's kind of open-ended. The other one, well, but this one's also open-ended.
This is to allow authorizing the town manager to act as the agent of the town, locating an appropriate
I
place to
understand
stop.
that, but
It'll be his decision to locate with the engineers on the appropriate place to stop. It's very clear.
I understand that,
Okay.
Glenn, but I'm saying that I want to know when he's going to report back to the town council. We don't need to have a special meeting. We have a meeting Monday night, but he can, as usual, either email us or call each of us to let us know when the project stopped. And I think it needs to be immediate.
Actually, I'd like to bounce off of Mrs. Carlson's question there, question to Ken. We're looking for a stopping point. Are we close to one, to a spot as the engineering firm? Are we close to a spot that we can actually stop it? You know, and what would a estimated time frame be?
Because they're not progressing down the street. Right.
So it's a difficult question because we don't know what is in the near future, I can tell you that they have hammered their way up the road quite a bit from where they laid their last pipe. And so one of our concerns with stopping immediately would be, we don't want to pay for rock that was not removed in order to put any pipe in the ground. In addition, we also, we like to terminate sewer projects at a manhole so that you can get future use out of the pipe that we've been put in to date. What we would like to do is to get to the manhole as the rock drops off, we're approaching Ninth Street. As a bare minimum, we would like to get to the manhole at Ninth Street, which is a pretty short distance up the road from where we are. What we would prefer to do then, though, it looks like the rock drops off between Knight and Sharp, and that we could probably get that last run in, and that'll get us a little more than right around halfway up the road. That looks like a really good place to stop before we get further into the rock. So the answer is a little hard to make until we get a better assessment of where that is. We could stop at any time. The challenge with stopping immediately is we don't have a way to utilize that sewer line that has been put in to date. If somebody needed to connect to it, you've got a pretty high sunk cost into what's in the ground now. And our preference would be that we get the ability to button it up, have services extended to the property line from what we have put in. And in the distant future, if somebody wants to connect to it, you will have the ability to utilize the line that's in the ground rather than just abandoning the work that's been done to date. And I think that's in the best interest of the town, but it's up to the...
So, Mr. Nichols, that's, you know, again, some flexibility and an appropriate place to stop, and that's to be determined. All
Right,
right?
but I think I'd like some sort of idea of.
Not necessarily
the
no, because we
timeline-
don't know.
Timeline. Thank you, Fred. Thank you.
How many days? We don't know.
Well, but that's a
Appropriate
question
place.
for Ken.
I think he's just said he didn't know right now. So, go ahead.
I don't know for sure, but I can say that my hope, if we jump out of that rock, it's a very short distance. I think, Tim, you can correct me if I'm wrong, I think the distance to get from where we are now to Ninth Street from a pipe stand, and most of the rock is already pulled in that, there's a little more hammering to do there, is only like 60 feet. In theory, once the rock's out, that pipe could be laid in a day. The distance then up to Sharp Street is only like another 170, 180 feet, something like that.
But if you're only progressing
And-
5 to 7 feet, it doesn't seem to me that this will stop anytime soon.
So the
If you say
deceptive,
60,
yeah, so the deceptive thing is the reason that they're progressing 5 to 7 feet is just because they've been hammering rock more than laying pipe. Once the rock is out of the way, we actually think that can all be done. Our hope would be done by next week, and we would actually go back and then finish off a few service connections to the property line, and then come in and pave, and you'd have a project that's buttoned up pretty quickly. I think a reasonable 2-week time frame is always kind of a good planning horizon for what needs to happen there. There would be probably some follow-on things. We would still make the contractor test the lines and other things. Again, subject to what we hit in the ground. I think if we get back into a situation, and we've done some test bits out ahead just to check it, if we got back into a situation where we saw a lot of rock coming up again and it looked like we were going to have to do excessive hammering, I probably would suggest to you that we should stop earlier rather than later.
Yeah, but you knew. I took the young engineer before you were.
All right, we're moving to the questions. And motion made and seconded. All in favor?
so should we put a 2-week deadline on this to get another report back? Because what I don't want to do is spend a lot of extra money trying to chip away at a piece of granite we can't get through. So can we ask for some type of time limit?
We certainly can ask for a 2-week report back, but whether it gets done or not, but at least we'll have a report in 2 weeks. How will that be added to the...
So, the idea is...
Please, we're trying to discuss up here. We're not answering the audience, we're answering up here.
Answer the question he knew. When you're doing something, you need rock. You have to do those.
Councilman Carlson, what would you like the resolution to say?
They knew there was a problem.
The question is 2 weeks sufficient?
Use your mics.
What, this is to report back to the town council in 2 weeks?
Or less?
what am I and what is the staff reporting back?
For the stopping.
For like a location to stop?
Right, because it says
Okay,
in
we can do
here.
that.
Okay.
All right, so the addition, I guess, Mr. Gorham, if you want to add it, but it's within, what, a 2-week period? Would you add that in the front line, the first paragraph? Sure. All right, so.
Okay, wait a minute, one more
In the
question.
first paragraph, we'll just put, make a motion, again, with the amendment to put within a 2-week period to report back to the county.
I gave you guys a petition
All right.
signed by everybody on Hassel Street saying they don't want the sewer.
All right, thank you, thank you.
Do you want a copy?
We have the motion and with the amendment. Any
Okay,
other?
yes. In the 1, 2, 3, 4, fifth whereas, depending on outstanding expenditures, excess materials, and other factors, once a stopping location has been determined by the town manager again, I think that's a typo, and in consultation with the town's consulting engineers and the town finance director, my question is, what does this mean? Outstanding expenditures, excess materials, and other factors, which other factors sounds kind
I
of
can
general.
explain why that's in there. I think we went over this earlier.
But they weren't there,
did-
I was, okay.
Okay. The reason that that is in there is because the contract that we have with Rockio requires that we give them 7 days' notice of termination of the contract. There is a portion of the contract that actually gives the town the authority to cancel the contract even without cause. And in order to exercise that, we have to have someone who can exercise it, and I think the town manager is the person to do it. Once he's made the determination, because otherwise, you're just going to be extending the period of performance for Rockio. Well, hold on, until there's another town council meeting. And the if you authorize the town manager to terminate the contract at the appropriate time, at the appropriate point, I really think it's going to pay dividends for the town in trying to end the contractual obligations that it has to Rockio, and that's why that's in there.
I agree, I don't want this to keep dragging
Right,
on, and as
and-
Glenn likes to say,
Well,
okay, well, all right, then let's have this report on Monday.
2 weeks to report.
No, let's stop, I'm amending it. We have a meeting on Monday. Why? Graham, you're not here?
Next Monday?
Let's stop wasting money, is my point. All right, 2 weeks is too many. Greg and I have gone back and decided 2 weeks is too many.
We have a meeting next Monday night.
So we should have some sort of,
Want that final report, where it's going to be.
We'll have a report Monday at the next meeting.
all right, October 23rd needs to go in the resolution. Mr. Gorham, could you please do that?
Is that in?
October
Is
23rd,
that in
thank
now?
you.
the resolution will be amended to provide that the town manager will report back by the town council meeting on October 23rd.
All right, we have that now. All right, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Is that unanimous? Okay, unanimous. That one. All right, now we're on the next one, B2. Yeah. Why don't we read this,
All right,
you want to read it? You have a voice on it?
I'll give it a shot. I'm not going to read the title. Do you want me to read the title? I can read it. Okay, sure. Okay, I'll read the title. A resolution of the Town Council of the Town of Coventry, Rhode Island, directing the town manager to temporarily suspend the town's sewer facilities program, to direct the town's sewer engineering consultant to examine the 2016 sewer facilities plan as amended and its sewer project priorities, to take into consideration socioeconomic demographic data, to survey the different neighborhoods affected by the 2016 sewer facilities plan on various factors to include but not limited to desire to have their neighborhood sewered, and to order the town sewer subcommittee in cooperation with the sewer engineering consultant to bring forward a revised sewer facilities plan to the town council for consideration. Here's the language of that was the title, this is the language of the resolution. Whereas in June of 2016, the town council of the town of Coventry passed resolutions 74-16-4788 and 59-16-4773 to reinitiate the town of Coventry sewer facilities plan as amended, and whereas after considering recent public input over the cost of assessments, the town council wishes to temporarily suspend the town's sewer facilities program, and whereas the town council directs the town manager to carry out the temporary suspension of the town's sewer facilities program, and whereas the town council directs the town manager to have the town's sewer consulting engineers, Weston and Sampson, re-examine the 2016 sewer facilities plan and project priorities, and to revise the plan to take into account socioeconomic demographic data. And whereas the town council directs the town manager to survey all of the different neighborhoods in the town's 2016 facilities plan on, among other things, their desire to have sewers constructed in their neighborhood. And whereas the town council orders the town's sewer subcommittee, in cooperation with the town's sewer engineering consultant, to bring forward a revised sewer facilities plan to the town council for consideration in not more than 60 days from adoption of this resolution, that takes into account the pronounced residents' concerns, socioeconomic data, and financial considerations and impacts on the residents of Coventry. Now therefore be it resolved that the town council of the town of Coventry directs the town manager, 1, to carry out the temporary suspension of the town's sewer facilities program. 2, to re-examine through the town consulting engineers, Weston and Sampson, and the sewer subcommittee, the 2016 sewer facilities plan and project priorities and revise the plan to take into account socioeconomic demographic data. 3, to survey all of the different neighborhoods in the town's 2016 sewer facilities plan on, among other things, the desire of citizens living in such neighborhoods to have sewers constructed in their neighborhood. 4, to bring forward in cooperation with the town sewer engineering consultant and the town sewer and the sewer subcommittee a revised sewer facilities plan to the town council for consideration that takes into account the pronounced residents' concerns, socioeconomic data, and financial considerations and impacts on the residents of Coventry in not more than 60 days from adoption of this resolution. Passed and adopted, presumably today.
Okay, thank you for the reading. A lot of information. I think it's been well composed, and I think it's what we want at this stage of where we are right now. My only suggestion is to, on the period of time in not more than 60 days, I think that might be wishful thinking. I think we should amend that to maybe 120 days to make sure that it's done right. I think that's reasonable, and that is what I would recommend as an amendment.
Well,
Can I ask a question? Yeah. I've never seen, Ken, are you down there? Hi. Okay, I've never seen the 26, well, I don't think I've ever seen a facilities plan, and certainly did not see the 2016 one. Now, you're working off of the 2016 plan. Would there be that much to revise? Or I mean, I don't have any idea how long the process takes, but if that's a year old, can you do it in 60 to 90 days? I think 120 days is a long time.
So I think the challenge with the schedule at 60 days is, my understanding of the intent of the council is to do a questionnaire that we would actually get out to residents. If we did a questionnaire that was like a web-based only, that would actually be able to be done relatively quickly. If you do a questionnaire that we actually intend to mail out,